This is for,
Okay, good. Thanks for reminding me.
sure, this is for our vast internet audience, right? Okay,
I've listened to you some since when I couldn't come, so it's not lost on everybody.
right. So today we will do chapters 18 to 20, which struck me as a kind of unit, at least a narrative unit. And when we finished chapter 17, David had killed Goliath, and Saul had asked Abner, the head of his troops, who David was. And I just want to tell you, Abner is going to show up again in these books. So David spoke to Saul, and chapter 18 begins. When David had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that he was wearing and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him. As a result, Saul set him over the army, and all the people, even the servants of Saul, approved. As they were coming home, when David returned from killing the Philistine, the women came out of all the towns of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they made merry. Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Saul was very angry, for this saying displeased him. He said, "They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. What more can he have but the kingdom?" So Saul eyed David from that day on. The next day, an evil spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house, while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. Saul had his spear in his hand, and Saul threw the spear, for he thought, "I will pin David to the wall." But David eluded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And David marched out and came in, leading the army. David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. When Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for it was he who marched out and came in, leading them. Then Saul said to David, "Here is my elder daughter, Merab. I will give her to you as a wife. Only be valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, I will not raise a hand against him. Let the Philistines deal with him. David said to Saul, who am I and who are my kinsfolk, my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? But at the time when Saul's daughter Merab should have been given to David, she was given to Adriel the Meholathite as a wife. Now, Saul's daughter Michal loved David. Saul was told, and the thing pleased him. Saul thought, let me give her to him, that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Therefore, Saul said to David a second time, you shall now be my son-in-law. Saul commanded his servants, speak to David in private and say, see, the king is delighted with you, and all his servants love you. Now then, become the king's son-in-law. So Saul's servants reported these words to David in private. And David said, does it seem to you a little thing to become the king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and of no repute? The servants of Saul told him, this is what David said. Then Saul said, thus shall you say to David, the king desires no marriage present except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged on the king's enemies. Now, Saul planned to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. When his servants told David these words, David was well pleased to be the king's son-in-law. Before the time had expired, David rose and went along with his men and killed 100 of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, which were given in full number to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. Saul gave him his daughter Michal as a wife. But when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that Saul's daughter Michal loved him, Saul was still more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy from that time forward. Then the commanders of the Philistines came out to battle, and as often as they came out, David had more success than all the servants of Saul, so that his fame became very great. Saul spoke with his son Jonathan and with all his servants about killing David. But Saul's son Jonathan took great delight in David. Jonathan told David, my father Saul is trying to kill you. Therefore, be on guard tomorrow morning. Stay in a secret place and hide yourself. I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak to my father about you. If I learn anything, I will tell you. Jonathan then spoke well of David to his father Saul, saying to him, "The king should not sin against his servant David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his deeds have been of good service to you. For he took his life in his hand when he attacked the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great victory for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against an innocent person by killing David without cause?" Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan. Saul swore, "As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death." So Jonathan called David and related all these things to him. Jonathan then brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as before. Again, there was war, and David went out to fight the Philistines. He launched a heavy attack on them so that they fled before him. Then an evil spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, while David was playing music. Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he eluded Saul so that he struck the spear into the wall. David fled and escaped that night. Saul sent messengers to David's house to keep watch over him, planning to kill him in the morning. David's wife, Michal, told him, "If you do not save your life tonight, tomorrow you will be killed." So Michal let David down through the window. He fled away and escaped. Michal took an idol and laid it on the bed. She put a net of goat's hair on its head and covered it with the clothes. When Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, "He is sick." Then Saul sent the messengers to see David for themselves. He said, "Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may kill him." When the messengers came in, the idol was in the bed with the covering of goat's hair on its head. Saul said to Michal, "Why have you deceived me like this and let my enemy go so that he has escaped?" Michal answered Saul, "He said to me, 'Let me go. Why should I kill you?'" Now, David fled and escaped. He came to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. He and Samuel went and settled at Naioth. Saul was told, "David is at Naioth in Ramah." Then Saul sent messengers to take David. When they saw the company of the prophets in a frenzy, with Samuel standing in charge of them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also fell into a prophetic frenzy. When Saul was told, he sent other messengers, and they also fell into a frenzy. Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also fell into a frenzy. Then he himself went to Ramah. He came to the great well that is in Seku. He asked, "Where are Samuel and David?" And someone said, "They are at Naioth in Ramah." He went there toward Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God came upon him. As he was going, he fell into a prophetic frenzy until he came to Naioth in Ramah. He too stripped off his clothes, and he too fell into a frenzy before Samuel. He lay naked all that day and all that night. Therefore, it is said, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" David fled from Naioth in Ramah. He came before Jonathan and said, "What have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin against your father that he is trying to take my life?" He said to him, "Far from it, you shall not die. My father does nothing, either great or small, without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this from me? Never." But David also swore, "Your father knows well that you like me, and he thinks, 'Do not let Jonathan know this, or he will be grieved.' But truly, as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, there is but a step between me and death." Then Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." David said to Jonathan, "Tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at the meal. But let me go so that I may hide in the field until the third evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, 'David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all his family.' If he says, 'Good,' it will be well with your servant. But if he is angry, then know that evil has been determined by him. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a sacred covenant with you. But if there is guilt in me, kill me yourself. Why should you bring me to your father?" Jonathan said, "Far be it from you. If I knew that it was decided by my father that evil should come upon you, would I not tell you?" And David said to Jonathan, "Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?" Jonathan then replied to David, "Come, let us go out into the field." So they both went out into the field. Jonathan said to David, "By the Lord, the God of Israel, when I have sounded out my father about this time tomorrow or on the third day, if he is well disposed toward David, shall I not then send and disclose it to you? But if my father intends to do you harm, the Lord do so to Jonathan, and more also, if I do not disclose it to you and send you away so that you may go in safety. May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, show me the faithful love of the Lord. But if I die, never cut off your faithful love from my house even if the Lord were to cut off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth. Thus, Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord seek out the enemies of David." Jonathan made David swear again by his love for him, for he loved him as he loved his own life. Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow is the new moon. You will be missed because your place will be empty. On the day after tomorrow, you shall go a long way down, go to the place where you hid yourself earlier and remain beside the stone there. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I shot at a mark. Then I will send the boy, saying, 'Go find the arrows.' If I say to the boy, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you, collect them,' then you are to come, for as the Lord lives, it is safe for you, and there is no danger. But if I say to the young man, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' then go, for the Lord has sent you away. As for the matter about which you and I have spoken, the Lord is witness between you and me forever." So David hid himself in the field. When the new moon came, the king sat at the feast to eat. The king sat upon his seat, as at other times, upon the seat by the wall. Jonathan stood while Abner sat by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Saul did not say anything that day, for he thought, "Something has befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean." But on the second day, the day after the new moon, David's place was empty. And Saul said to his son Jonathan, "Why has the son of Jesse not come to the feast, either yesterday or today?" Jonathan answered Saul, "David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. He said, 'Let me go, for our family is holding a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. So now, if I have found favor in your sight, let me get away and see my brothers.' For this reason, he has not come to the king's table." Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan. He said to him, "You son of a perverse, rebellious woman. You son of a perverse, rebellious woman. Do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives upon the earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Now send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die." Then Jonathan answered his father Saul, "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" But Saul threw his spear at him to strike him. So Jonathan knew that it was the decision of his father to put David to death. Jonathan rose from the table in fierce anger and ate no food on the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, and because his father had disgraced him. In the morning, Jonathan went out into the field to the appointment with David, and with him was a little boy. He said to the boy, "Run and find the arrows that I shoot." As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called after the boy and said, "Is the arrow not beyond you?" Jonathan called after the boy, "Hurry, be quick, do not linger." So Jonathan's boy gathered up the arrows and came to his master. But the boy knew nothing. Only Jonathan and David knew the arrangement. Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said to him, "Go and carry them to the city." As soon as the boy had gone, David rose from beside the stone heap and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept with each other. David wept the more. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever.'" He got up and left, and Jonathan went into the city. So it looks like the break is final, huh?
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
The, Saul is a very complex character.
I think Saul is really complicated. And I feel a little bit sorry for him all the time. Because
I'm not so convinced of his, I know he thinks he wants to kill him, but I'm not so convinced of his actual commitment to it. Because he fails all the time.
yeah, he does.
And you would think a king of his stature would have this accomplished very easily if he really wanted it done.
Yeah.
But
I
don't you
think
think
the
he's,
failure is some ambiguity on, not ambiguity, some, in conclusion on his part.
you think it's because he knows God is with David and he'll bring
I
that?
think he knows David is in fact the better man.
Yeah.
And that he's against him for petty reasons.
Well, it must hurt that his son prefers David to him. Yeah.
And his daughters too. I mean, everybody likes him.
The relationship
Yeah.
with Jonathan, I think, gets in, puts Saul in a different position than he'd like to be with his own son.
Yeah. Well, yes,
Yes.
you would expect Jonathan to inherit the kingdom from him, to be
Yes.
the princeling, the crown prince,
Yeah.
whatever you call it.
But Jonathan is like preparing the way too,
For David.
because he said, "Remember, don't harm my descendants."
Yeah.
And they
to
make like a covenant.
Yeah.
Don't harm my children.
Mm.
You know it?
So Jonathan knows that his dad is history as far as it goes. I mean,
Yeah, I think Jonathan sees this is not going to work. And David is actually there's a good chance that David is going to rule this country.
I get the impression that he's so he cares so much about David and thinks so having that he would really think that would be okay. I mean, he does. I mean, I would think that he was willing. He said, I'll be the second person, whatever. I forget where it was, but you be the king and I'll be your second in command or whatever,
Yeah,
he was satisfied to be, close to with David and let David be the forward looking face of the kingdom.
yeah. But he was also in love with him, or
Yes.
he loved him. I don't know if in love is the right word. Because when he first met him, he gave him all his weapons, he gave him his robe, he like surrendered his rights to David.
I just think he wouldn't have been jealous of David being
Yeah,
David has already been a key figure in the royal court. I mean, really, rather
yeah,
than Jonathan. I mean, he killed his 10,000.
yeah,
But then always the stories that we hear are that Saul loved David's singing, and that that calmed his whatever was wrong with him, his mental anguish. But I mean, that's just a very small part of the story, but we hear that. We don't hear so much about Saul wanting to kill David. I mean, in the readings that we get normally,
I think a lot of children learn that in Sunday school, that I mean, that's one of the stories, the early stories you learn. They're not going to be telling this other part in that setting, but that here's David, he's, playing the lyre or whatever, and he's able to calm the king. And I mean, it's sort of that kind of story that's okay for kids, but this other part is fairly complicated for everybody.
it is.
And I think if you don't read it as we've done, as Larry has devised for us, I think the story doesn't break up very well into pieces.
What do you mean, Lori?
Well,
What do you
I mean, if
mean?
you just read this, in pieces, you wouldn't get the whole picture here
Oh, I see what you mean.
of this
Yeah,
ongoing, there's really an ongoing, I don't know, sense of disillusionment on Saul's part. It grows and it grows and it grows. In
yes,
spite of David's accomplishments for him, he wants to destroy him.
yeah,
he wants to be first in his people's eyes. He doesn't like it that they
yeah,
make so much of David.
he's really insecure.
Oh, well, I
Yeah.
don't think it's unreasonable for Saul to be jealous and insecure.
Mhm.
I mean, God is with David.
Yeah.
God is
Uh-huh.
sure that David gets all this success, that even Saul's own family choose David over
Yeah.
Saul.
Yeah, he's turning
I
again, yeah.
think Saul's jealousy is quite justified.
Yeah,
But that's part of the story. And in a lot of families, what would happen is if somebody new like David took the throne, then he would kill all the other likely pretenders to the throne, such as Jonathan, who was the previous king's son. So I think there's a lot writing on this.
there is. And that's why Jonathan makes the covenant with David. Don't hurt my children.
Protect yourself.
Yeah,
Well, it presages the ongoing history of that region for the next 1,000 years.
Right.
That's, our ruler did kill all his, potential rivals.
Yeah.
yeah,
And then of course David has his own complications later on.
he does. He really does. But
But at this stage of the story, David can do no wrong.
Right.
Yeah. He, every time Saul tries to kill him, they come up with a stratagem to prevent it.
yeah,
Um,
And he's successful in battle, and
yeah, he's successful in everything.
yeah.
He got the girl, he got the
Yeah.
He got the girl,
He
he got,
the
yeah,
job.
he got
got
the
the
job.
But I mean, he's a kind of a mythic character who has the miracle story of killing Goliath with his slingshot. I mean, that started the whole thing of like this person. I mean, he has the young, he's the calmer of the king. Then he's also the person who can use the slingshot, not armor that everybody else uses, but just the slingshot to kill the, most. So he's kind of a
The superhero.
ideal, ideal character.
I don't know. I just find Saul so sad. You know it, because he's anointed as the king and then he's rejected. And then he's, I guess, what can you say? He's doing his best to be king. And then David shows up and, no matter whether the Lord has stripped the kingdom away from him, his torment is so visible in this story that I feel sorry for him. It's interesting. It's really powerful story, I think. Yeah.
Do you think that Saul felt like he had maybe gotten the kingship without, not unwittingly, but that maybe he didn't really deserve it because of the way it happened, that Samuel had told him that God doesn't want to have a king, and
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of that because, Saul was like an experimental king.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and then God said, I'm not satisfied with this.
God
one.
threw up his hands and just said, okay, if
Yeah,
y'all want a king,
this is not a good one. Yeah,
I brought you out of Egypt. I've done this, that, and the other. If you
Yeah.
want to, God sort of sort of as a last resort gave up and just said, okay, have a king, but they're going to do this, that, and to your children and all that.
Yeah,
I wonder if that affected how Saul felt about David, about his own security.
yeah.
Well, and there's no evidence that, Saul seems to have been doing his best.
Yeah.
He didn't
Yeah, there's no evidence he was bad
willfully
at being a king.
sin or
Yeah,
anything. He was trying to do his best, and it seems like maybe God picked him at the beginning, was rather careless in his choice because he was having to pick a king in the first place.
Well,
And
he
then
may have-
all of a sudden he's going, no, I made a
not this
mistake.
one. Yeah,
Maybe he wanted to
Yeah.
set a bad example to begin with, so that the people would say, "Oh, you're right. We don't really need a king."
yeah.
Well, I also
Yeah,
want to
I
say
have
that
a feeling that Saul really did. He's got the short end of the stick.
He did.
he didn't have political skills to make himself, reap the rewards of having picked this guy to go out and save everybody by killing and by being as successful as a commander. He wasn't able to figure out how to use
How to use
David's
David.
success as reflecting on his skill as
Yeah.
a king to have this guy working for him.
Yeah,
He didn't seem to know how to engineer that, which might have made him happy if he could have figured out how to get all the glory for having David in his service.
I suspect that Saul thought he created a monster by having,
I think that's what he
that
thought.
I think he
David-
did. Yeah,
that he gave him responsibilities, hoping that
Yeah.
somebody would kill him, and he just
Yeah.
keeps having more success.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well,
well,
there's-
I find it interesting because I want to what's different between these two guys?
well, according
And
to the
so-
Bible, it's God.
Yeah, but
God is favoring David.
yeah, but Saul is always bad to David. Although I think he's ambiguous about
Well,
David.
that's what jealousy is, isn't it?
Yeah,
bad.
but
It creates
David-
bad actions.
But the interesting part to me is David never lifts a hand against Saul.
No.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah.
He doesn't
Even
fight
when as we get later on into this story, even when he has a chance to lift his hand against him, he doesn't do it.
Hmm.
Is
It's
it your lead up thing that said about how he respected I've forgotten what thing we read. It wasn't the introductory thing that you wrote about. how
Yeah, he
that-
really,
He respected him.
respected and loved David, and yet he, you
he
know,
hated him at the same time. Yeah,
was- yeah. I was trying to remember your words, but
yeah.
very-
But David respected Saul as God's anointed king.
Yep.
Oh, there. Little light.
I think
Anyway.
there's also the suggestion that Saul was mentally ill.
Yeah,
David first comes because he has stress and anxiety to come and play music and help relieve his stress. And there's,
yeah,
it seems like he has a couple of mad episodes where he's throwing his
Yeah.
spear, even though the chances of it, if he couldn't hit David when he's that close with a spear, then what's going on? I think
he was,
they're severely
hit the wall.
mentally ill, and paranoia is certainly part of that.
yeah, I think
that's
so
certainly
too.
another explanation for
Yeah,
Saul's attitude, is that he was damaged goods in some respects.
yeah,
So maybe David was embarrassed for him or didn't want to call attention to this by confronting him. I mean,
yeah.
he's perfect, right? There's nothing he can do that's wrong.
David?
Yes,
Not
he's just perfect.
Not yet.
At least at this
Not
point,
yet.
he's just perfect.
Yeah, he doesn't stay perfect, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But right now, he's perfect.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now, he's perfect.
The house of
You're
David,
right.
he's perfect.
Don't turn
Yeah,
the-
it's true. I want to talk about next Wednesday, which
Okay.
I think is the 13th of April, and I set it all up for the
It's the 12th.
12th, or I can't remember. But anyway, I set it all up, and so you can go on. Barbara is having surgery
Oh,
a week from today. And chances are I will not be with you. But
Okay.
you guys really feel free
Okay,
to go ahead with the chunk that I laid out. I forget
Okay.
what it is. I don't have it in front of me right
21,
now.
22, 23, I think you said.
I think it is.
It's in the email. I can, yeah. well,
Okay.
Lori, will you be available
Yeah.
to read? And, or Sandy, either one, but Lori.
Yeah, whoever wants to read
Divide it up.
is you actually don't need me, really.
We do need
Hey,
you.
whoa.
No, we
Hey, wait a
need
minute, you need me.
We need you.
In the interest of moving along, we should probably do that.
Yeah, I think so, because
I-
we're looking at if we're gonna go through 2 Samuel, I think we should keep it up. You know
Sandy and I
what?
could split it up if.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. And then I'll listen to you guys on YouTube or
Yeah.
whatever else.
Okay, I'll do the Zoom again. Will you send?
Yeah.
So will you remind Pam, as you have been doing, to send? I mean, to put it in the email?
Usually she's got it
Got it already?
on her, her rotation, however she does
Yeah.
those things, but I'll remind her
He's
that,
the wizard.
that it's gonna happen on the 13th or the 12th, whatever the date
Oh,
is.
you know what? Okay,
What?
that's going to be tricky for me too. Margaret?
Yeah, I can start
Okay,
the
you can
meeting.
start.
Sure.
Okay, Margaret,
Yeah.
I have, Imogen is going to the junior senior prom or the junior prom.
Oh, whoa, yeah,
Well, that's not till Friday, but she's been trying to get her hair cut for, I can't tell you how long. And so we have an appointment at 6 o'clock to get her hair
Oh, yeah.
cut on the 12th. And I don't think I'll be home by 7.
you need to focus on her. I'm sure it's a big.
Yeah.
I do.
big deal.
This is the kind of thing that her mother
Yeah.
can't do for her, so
yeah, of course.
um,
Well, you
Uh,
could change the
priority.
time too, you guys,
So Margaret, you start the Zoom and you guys read, and then I'll listen to the
Okay.
recording.
Okay,
And if I get home, I'll
yeah, yeah,
join.
feel free to
Oh,
jump in.
great, excellent, you guys, yeah.
I'll put
Good.
that on my calendar right now, just so I don't.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And then I can work on the other chunks.
Okay, good.
I'll have that, while I'm sitting around waiting
So I
at
hope
the
it's just,
hospital and stuff.
this is something minor, I hope.
Well, that's what they say. But I don't know. It's
Yeah, that's all right.
a little,
We'll see.
yeah. If you would, thank you.
Well, we will
I
pray
know
for
you
her
were gonna
tomorrow-
say, we'll say a prayer for her. If you would, that would be
We
really
will.
nice.
Tomorrow
Yeah.
morning,
Yeah.
we will.
Yeah, our 8
Yeah.
o'clock morning prayer.
Our 8 o'clock service, we will.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. I'll send that to Mr. D to F list too.
Yeah,
I'll say, would you guys mind? Yeah,
I think that's always good.
Well,
yeah,
I'm glad John mentioned that we should email our groups. the Holy Week.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do
yeah,
that.
indeed.
So,
Well, there you go.
thank you
Okay.
for another wonderful.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. I thought this really took off, this
Yeah.
story, didn't it? Yeah,
Quite a story.
it's
yeah,
quite
yeah,
a
there's
story.
page turner.
It
You
is
have
a
to go
page
back and say,
turner.
now, what was that that happened? I keep waiting for that time for the arrows to go with Jonathan and them, but then we finally got to that. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
these
yeah, we
certain
did.
stories that you remember and you think, where is that?
Yeah, really. Now it's sort of like coheres, and then it'll always be in your mind. Oh yeah, if I want to read that again, I should go here, or rummage
I hope I
around
don't do
here.
that. I don't know if I
Yeah.
might at that point, but
Yeah.
yeah. But anyway,
Anyway,
yeah, this
great
had a lot of
guys.
stories. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank
Okay.
you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. See you
Okay,
this
bye.
week. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, Margaret,
Bye-bye.
see you in the morning.
See you in the morning.
All right.